Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I'm going to be talking about Fantasy Flight Games' new Legend of the Five Rings. It's actually the 6th edition of the game, and here's the question. Now, this is an uncomfortable question, but I think it really needs to be raised. Should Fantasy Flight Games' Legends of the Five Rings have been made? It's new 2018 release of the tabletop role-playing game Legends of the Five Rings. Okay, should it have been released by Fantasy Flight Games? Here's the answer. No, I personally do not think that Fantasy Flight Games Legends of the Five Rings should have been released in a 6th edition, right? And when I say it's 6th edition, I know it's the 5th edition of the straight L5R, but it also was an edition as Oriental. Rokugan served duty as Rokugan in Oriental Adventures for Dungeons & Dragons as an official setting, right? I consider that an addition of the game. I think Fantasy Flight Games L5R is 6E of Legends of the Five Rings, okay? So the question is, should it have been made, right? Now, why would we even bring this question up? Well, here's the issue, okay? And this is an ugly, hard fact, but I'm going to talk about it, and I'm going to be careful. I'm going to treat this with as much respect as possible. But the reality is, I like to talk about tabletop role-playing games at the industry level, and I think we need to recognize where we have problems. And I think Legend of the Five Rings is a problem, and so I'm going to talk it through, and I'm very curious what you think. Let me know. All right, here's the issue, all right? Legends of the Five Rings is based on feudal Japan, okay? And then added to feudal Japan for Legends of the Five Rings is mythology, okay? Now, what's the issue here, right? So how's that a problem? Well, the creator is the problem, okay? And the game itself is a problem, okay? The creator is John Wick, right? John Wick is not Japanese, right? He's not remotely to my knowledge, he's not Japanese. He's a white dude, right? And in addition to that, I don't even think he speaks Japanese, right? So here's the issue, right? When you have a game that is based primarily on one specific culture that is not the culture of the creator, there are immediately 3 questions that come up for that game immediately, okay? And that is the following. Here's the 3 questions. Is this a caricature? Is this appropriation? Is this myopia, right? Now, what I mean by a caricature is this game an homage to that culture, or is it actually a caricature of the culture? And maybe not a kind caricature, okay? Here's the other one. Is it appropriation? Is someone taking elements of somebody else's culture, profiting from them, applying them in ways that maybe they should be applied, applying them in ways that culture isn't comfortable with, applying them in ways that culture is trying to move past, things like that, right? And here's the last one. Is it are we looking at myopia, right? Is it a myopic view of that culture, right? So with Legends of the Five Rings specifically, myopic. Is it myopic, right? There's a really, really, really high focus on samurai, right? There's a high focus on Japanese weapons. There's a high focus on Japanese war techniques, right? There's a high focus on Japanese monsters, right? But what about their religion? What about their food? What about their rituals? What about their dress? And what about all members of their culture beyond samurai in that period, right? To my knowledge, the vast majority of, like 80 or 90% of all PCs are going to be samurai. I'm not sure there's really even a robust ability to play any other class, right? Generally, it's going to be samurai and not much else, right? That could be seen as a myopic view of feudal Japan culture, right? So anytime you have a setting that is based primarily on on one specific culture, right? And your creator is not a member of that culture, then anyone from that culture can legitimately at any time come forward and say, is this a caricature? Is this appropriation? Is this myopia? right? And here's the kicker. It doesn't matter what the answers are, right? Your game should not even be engendering this conversation. Your game should not be rich soil for these questions, right? And so that's the issue, right? Now, I can hear already people like, what? There's been 6 editions of this game, and, there's never been a problem. But the reality is I do think there's a problem. And the reason why I think there's a problem has nothing to do with Fantasy Flight Games and has nothing to do with Legends of the Five Rings. It has to do with Dungeons & Dragons, right? I watch Dungeons & Dragons with hyper focus, right? And so look at what is happening right now with Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, right? So here's what's happening with Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. You are seeing, so what are the settings that are getting love in 5th edition, right? Well, here they are, right? Forgotten Realms, Eberron, Guilds of Ravnica, right? Spelljammer is getting a little bit of love. Ravenloft, right? Oh, wait. What about Al-Qadim? One that has, where there was a product that was called Al-Qadim Arabian Empires. What about Oriental Adventures? Have you heard even a hint from WotC about Al-Qadim or Oriental Adventures attached to 5th edition? Not a whisper, right? And the reason why is Wizards of the Coast realizes this exact issue. You cannot today, in modern society, take a culture and say, I'm going to make this my setting for my game, right? Especially if you are not a member of that culture, right? I think most of the time, I think Al-Qadim, I think Oriental Adventures, I think Legends of the Five Rings, I think every single one of those games was intended as an homage. They were intended with incredible respect, right? I believe every single one of those settings, when the creators set out to create those settings, they did them as an homage, and they treaded forward with incredible respect, right? With intended respect. But here's the issue. If you are not a member of another culture, you are generally going to have a lacuna. You're going to have ignorance about that culture. And you even approaching those cultures, saying, this culture is now a setting for my game, opens the legitimate conversation of, is this a character? Is this appropriation? Is this myopia? Right? And so that's my issue. And I will say, I had a good friend. He was Japanese, and he loved Legends of Five Rings, and he ran it, and I played in it, and I was a big fan of that game 15 years ago, right? But the reality is, easily 15 years. But the reality is, today, looking at that game and saying, should this really get a 6th edition? Well, Dungeons & Dragons looked at the exact same, look at their settings that had the same flavor, right? Which is, hey, I took somebody's culture and I made it a setting in my game, and the creator is really not from that culture, right? And they said, no more. We're not doing this anymore. These are not getting a new editions. This is not getting new shine, right? And I think Dungeons & Dragons is right. I don't think there should be a new Oriental Adventure. I don't think there should be a new Al-Qadim. I don't think, and honestly, I really like the dice. I was really thinking about buying Legends of the Five Rings, especially because of what they're doing with the dice. I think what they're doing with the dice is incredibly innovative, and I honestly think FFG is doing the same thing. I think they mean this as an homage. They mean it with incredible respect. But the reality is, it's tone deaf. It is very, very tone deaf, right? And so I really feel like nowadays, you just can't, this is a chainmail bikini problem. In tabletop role-playing games, especially early on, you look at any of those old games, you're going to see some chainmail bikinis back in the 70s, back in the 80s, right? This is a historical problem that the tabletop role-playing game industry had. The industry recognized the problem, and it fixed it. Look at 5th edition. You're not going to find any chainmail bikinis in 5th edition. They don't exist there, right? This has been fixed. Same thing with settings that are based on one specific people's culture, right? So, and here's the issue. I think if actually fixing this problem is its own, I can't even, like, within the context of this video, I can't tell you how to fix this problem. But it's a larger conversation, right? But looking at it, you know, and I am electing to not buy Legends of the Five Rings 6th edition because I just don't think it's good for the hobby overall, right? And this is amazing to me, right? Wizards of the Coast, an American company, right, is choosing not to go forward with settings like this. Al-Qadim is getting, Al-Qadim and Orient Adventures are getting no shine in 5th edition, right? But Fantasy Flight Games, which used to be an American company and is now essentially a French company because it's owned by Asmodee, right? This is the first time I have ever seen where an American company is showing more sensitivity to political, cultural, and social issues of modern day than a European company, right? Like, it's a little surprising to me, right, that the French would be this tone deaf over this issue, right? So, in my opinion, I do not think that Legends of the Five Rings 6th edition should have been made. I really enjoyed playing this game when I played it. I think it was a different time, but, you know, especially today, when people's cultures, when how we use people's cultures is really being looked at very closely, and we all need to reflect and say, is this the best use of our time? Is this the best use? Is this the best place to spend my money in the hobby? And I look at it and I think, I don't know. I'm not sure that a French company making a game, about feudal Japan with mythology elements mixed in, made by an American who is not Japanese, is really the best use of anybody's money. Right? Now, that's my 2 cents on the topic. I think FFG should have spent some time on something else, right? Or maybe I personally think their time would have been spent better making a different game. And also, I do think that overall the industry is starting to see this. Renegade Games has made Overlight, and that is a beautiful brand new game that I think does a really good job of approaching this. Within Overlight, you see elements from many cultures being brought in, and those cultures are evenly distributed. It's one element within the game. You see elements from cultures all over the world. You see European elements, you see Asian elements, you see South American elements. It's a good mixture, right? Where it's not creators coming in and taking one culture and then focusing on the things that are exciting to them about that culture, but really, because they're not part of that culture, not really having the ability to adequately, in my opinion, always defend themselves against those 3 core questions, which are, is this a caricature? Is this appropriation? Is this myopia, right? And if you are focusing your game on one culture, and you're a creator who is not from that culture, I just don't, in 2018 and going forward, I don't think that's wise. And honestly, I'm not saying this because this is what I think. I'm saying this because I feel this is a lesson that Wizards of the Coast has taught. They got to choose what settings they were going to give shine to with 5th edition. And I think Mike Mearls carefully looked at it and said, there's no way we're touching Al-Qadim or Oriental Adventures and giving them new purchase in this edition. And I think that was very carefully chosen. And I think Wizards of the Coast was right on that decision. This is a sensitive subject. I'm aware of that. I tried to approach this with as much respect as possible. Please be respectful in the comments. And I'd love to hear your opinion. Please think about what I've said on this topic. I think overall, the only reason I'm even bringing this up is I truly care about the TRPG industry. I really want us to be going in the right direction. And I don't want a return of it, and to me, chainmail bikinis are figured out, right? We do not need to repeat problems that we've already defeated within the industry, right? And I think this is the same issue here. We've got to learn this lesson. And I think Dungeons & Dragons, Wizards of the Coast has learned this lesson. Fantasy Flight Games, clearly, I don't think they've learned this lesson, right? I think that's where we're at. Take care. Have a good evening.